Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm the man from the European Commission, but before I was the man from the European Commission, I was from Carrickmacross, County Monaghan. So I feel a bit at home here. So thank you for having me, and thank you, Minister, for allowing me to be here for your first public speech. There were several things in it that I really liked, but I'll just start with one of them. I mean, you made reference. You were saying that we should pay tribute to the work that people in universities do. And you made reference to the way they pay attention to the needs of their students, to the needs of their towns, their cities, their regions, and to the world of knowledge. And I think in that very simple phrase, I think you've caught something really important. We are asking a lot from our universities, but really, I mean, the point at European level is that as we look at the challenges that we face, as we look at the ways forward for Europe to do better, to build growth, to build a response to the societal challenges that we face, there isn't anything else other than knowledge that will get us through. And so we are relying on knowledge and universities as centres of learning, centres of knowledge in Europe. 4,500 to 5,000 universities across Europe, as far as I recall. These have a huge and important role to play, and HEInnovate has all been about one aspect of allowing them to play their role in a better way. Let me just go back in context, not as far back as the 1950s, evoked by Richard, but in 2008, the Commission established a university business forum, just around the idea that there could be useful things to be gained by making universities and businesses come together occasionally in a talking shop, come together and talk about the things they could do together. And talking shops are what Brussels is good at, but this is one which has produced some concrete outcomes. It's produced two very concrete outcomes. One of those is an action within Erasmus+, the Erasmus+ programme, which is the Knowledge Alliances, which is a facility where we will grant aid businesses and universities who come together across borders, that's the way we normally work, to create new curricula, new educational content, new approaches to things. So there's a particular action within Erasmus which was suggested there and was created and has gone on and has been quite useful. And the other one, which was suggested there, was to create what became the HEInnovate tool. So the idea was mentioned by somebody in one of the university business forums, and one of my colleagues, and it wasn't me, somebody tried to introduce me earlier this morning as the father of HEInnovate. I'm certainly not that. I'm more like the uncle who went off to America and came back later, you know, when all the work was done. But HEInnovate was set up and started working in 2013 as a tool for people in university administrations to use in the privacy of their own office, to do a little self-assessment exercise based on a set of criteria and see what it tells them about their university, how open it is, how innovative it is, how entrepreneurial it is. That's the simple essence of HEInnovate. And from that, something real and substantial has grown. 700, close to 700 universities, not just in Europe, but across the world, have used it. A community of practice has grown up around it. And the next stage in the development was to think that this is not just a tool which is of interest at the level of an individual institution. Why not use it as a framework to look at systems? As you pointed out there earlier, Brian, system-level strategies are important in these things. The issues which we're looking at are too important to be left to individuals on their own or to institutions on their own. So system-level strategies are important, and that's the origin of the extension of the HEInnovate mechanism into the area of country review strategies, with the real work being done by the OECD with support from ourselves in the Commission. And there we have representatives here from Bulgaria. We have the Irish experience, and the focus this morning is very much on the Irish experience. We have a Dutch exercise starting out, and we will have others. We have Poland going on. So this is a tool by which Europe's systems can be looked at on the basis of a common framework related to challenges which everybody is facing. The issue is to see what it tells you about yourselves and what it tells you about your system. Now, as I say, I'm coming here on behalf of the Commission, but I'm also coming home, and I've looked at the report, the still in pre-finalised version of the report, And what I can say is that I recognise Ireland in it. I recognise Ireland. I recognise Ireland also in it for the challenges which I see across Europe as well. I mean, I see the Irish version of the issues related to the balance between central control and autonomy of the institution. I see that there, with the related question of funding, a particularly difficult one at this time. Not just for Ireland, but the Irish version of the funding challenges and how you fund and the extent to which you fund universities is an important issue, and I see that reflected here. I see an issue which I'm very fond of, which is to do with multidisciplinarity and the role of the arts and humanities in your innovation and outreach strategies. I think that's an interesting point. If there is a risk with the focus on entrepreneurship and innovation, if there is a risk with that, there is a risk that we become too instrumental, that we try and turn universities into something which are machines for innovations, and we have a wrong sense of what happens here. As Brian pointed out, one of the insights that I take from the work that I have the privilege of doing with these issues through the Marie Curie program, through the European Institute of Technology, through other issues around here, at the core of this search for a new response to innovation challenges, there must be a focus on the human element and not simply on creating mechanisms by which you feed in an idea and an innovation for the market will come out at the end. I think we have a risk that we have oversimplified a sense of how innovation strategies are going to work, and I think it's important that we focus on the human element, on this point, as Brian mentioned, the point that innovations take place at the interfaces between groups of knowledge, and in that I see arts and humanities as providing very necessary and interesting glue to make other disciplines work together. I see interesting focus in this report on the regional dimensions, very important point. We are obsessed at the moment in Brussels with trying to get universities and regional authorities across Europe to work together. We have a whole, if there are enough buzzwords around the HEInnovate discussions, there is a whole other set of buzzwords around the smart specialisation strategies that Europe is looking to drive growth and development, particularly in the in the poorer regions of Europe. And regional dimensions to what we're looking at here, and the idea that universities and groups of universities can cluster at regional level, work together, and then work with their regional authorities. Yeah, it's good that the question is raised in an Irish context. It's a question which I see as being more difficult in other parts of Europe. There are so, I mean, I'm just picking those out at random from the things that I have picked up from this report on Ireland. Others will be in a position to say more about that. Is we create the framework. I just know that as you work through this framework in an Irish context, you will have good and interesting lessons to offer to the rest of Europe who are coming after you in this respect. And that brings me to the point as what we're doing next with the HEInnovate tool. We want to continue developing it. We are quite proud of it. We think it's a very successful European initiative, and we don't have so many of those to shout about these days. We want to continue to develop the tool as it serves the institution. In other words, the original HEInnovate self-assessment tool that you can do on your computer. We want to make it better. We're working on the interface. We're working on language versions of it to make it more approachable to people outside the main language groupings. And at the level of the country tools, well, you know, when we have a reasonable group of countries who have gone through this experience together, we want to engage in more peer learning between them and the other countries who may come later in this respect, on the basis that the experience that you are working through here with this, it is about Ireland, it is focused on Ireland. The most important debate that is intended to trigger is an Irish debate about what we should do, but also in the process of doing so, you will have things to tell others. across Europe, and there is a potential for learning to take place, and we want to be able to facilitate that. So that's something we're going to move on with. There will be more countries coming into the frame. I can't say at this stage yet, but we know there are countries who are interested. At the session in Brussels 2 weeks ago, where Brian and I and others were there, we heard strong bids to get involved in the next phase from Portugal and also from Scotland. Yeah, whether it's an independent member of the European Union or not, it's a separate university system. I'm not supposed to talk about Brexit, by the way. Sorry, unlike you, Minister. I'm under orders not to. So I've gone off script there. I did want to finish by coming back to something you said, Minister, which was you talked about the business. You seem to be suggesting that we in Ireland aren't that good at learning from others. I think you're. I don't agree with you, because I've seen in the years I've moved from this country, from Ireland, where I was a civil servant, to Brussels, working first in the social policy area and then in the education area. I actually see Ireland as being one of the really good participants in the kind of learning activities that I have been working on in both those areas. The learning end of the Brussels, or of the European Union, is one of the unsung and less controversial parts of what we do, but for me it's hugely, hugely important. I mean, people talk about the 4 freedoms which are there in the treaty. There's a 5th freedom, which is to freely exchange among ourselves, and I think that's what we do. Sometimes it's what we do in Brussels best. Ireland has a lot. It's quite clear from this report, and you can see it immediately, that Ireland's HEIs have embraced entrepreneurship, have been open, to an extent that I wish I could say happens elsewhere in Europe. Of course, there are things that Ireland needs to learn better. The question of autonomy, funding, central control is an issue for everybody, and Ireland has to work out its good ways to do that. The point I made about the humanities and so on, these are all issues in which Ireland has things to learn, but Ireland has a huge amount to offer as well. So I think, Minister, you shouldn't feel it's all learning in one way or anything like that. But then the real challenge is to actually, the exchanges that we can have in a room like this, and that we have in the forum in Brussels a few weeks ago, between like-minded people who are interested in the common challenges they share, that's really, really good. It's really interesting. That the real challenge is to actually take that learning and make it work within national systems, and that's the challenge on which I'm happy to turn back to Mary and her colleagues, because that's the tough one. The easy bit is what we do in Brussels. So to all of you for having invited me back here for today, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back in sunny Dublin, having left absolutely pouring rain Brussels yesterday. The world is turned upside down. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to a good day's discussion.